Normally, writing a video on a game that's so heavily narrative-based is pretty straightforward, which is why working on a video covering Tales Noir has kept me up for nights on end on account of the Byford Dolphin level case of the bends this game's inconsistency has given me, leaving me to rip my face off before the nitrogen in my blood even gets a chance to boil. We'll just say I took my sweet time. I can't make a shitty diagram like this bad boy if I'm forcing it pell-mell. I think this game's soundtrack and art direction are talked about more than the game ever will be. Considering how stellar and flawless both of these aspects are, half of the game's praise is directly towards these parts. Taking place in late October, the warm color palettes in these giant 2.5D environments symbolize the game's theme of change, coming to terms with losing who you once were and accepting what you... Yeah, okay, just consult the Venn diagram. Normally, games with this kind of narrative focus on adolescence, as coming to terms with how cold-hearted the world can be and understanding the fine balance of trust and skepticism are harshly learned traits. And telling that story through a protagonist or cast that are coming of age is just a natural blend of ingredients with this kind of narrative. That being said, adolescence is not at all a factor here, but the narrative of change still easily equates to the story of our Howard Loader, a private investigator in over his head, digging a deeper and deeper grave for himself when he lands a case that buries him in deeper and deeper shit as he gets closer to deconstructing what's behind and beyond the animal racism in the great city of Zootopia, Canada. Being a private investigator, the investigative gameplay that comes with the job is mostly done through dialogue, along with smaller puzzles and stealth sections that get your hands a bit dirty while breaking up the longer dialogue sections. Right from the first person you talk to, you'll quickly understand how this game forces you to watch your fucking mouth. Most dialogue trees can be looped back to earlier branching points in conversation for the sake of simplicity when they have more basic information, but the people who have what you really need can smell your bullshit and catch you out in lies directly. You'll never be locked out of progression, but the way you approach each situation can be smooth or problematic, so there's sort of a reward for trying to understand how best to go about charming someone. A part of me wishes they went a little closer to the way Oxenfree approaches dialogue, not in how conversation flows, Tales Noir does fine with that, but in the way player input has a much bigger consequence. To elaborate, Oxenfree does a good job making even the smaller dialogue sections that may feel less important in the moment have major sway in the way they play out with player input, affecting smaller story beats later on, adding to the larger story, and ultimately changing the entire playthrough. While locking players out of important info is an obvious hole in this kind of idea, I still think Tales Noir would benefit from a lot more punishment for missing and mixing up important details. It feels a little unfair to tell a team called Eggnut that their furry detective game isn't making socializing hard enough for me, but their following release that came out not long after understands how to make each decision matter a lot more, so I think I'm not the first person to levy this criticism. While the level design is tight with its leash, it's actually disguised quite well, almost coming across as a sort of immersive sim at first. Most situations give the player the ability to dictate how they handle themselves and their words during conversation, allowing you to imply to Johnny you are so fucked up and want him so fucking bad that he'll help you under the condition you leave him the fuck alone. For an actual example, the first level has several ways into the bite, which is Clarissa's nightclub, the intercom, the roof, and the secret third medication, all of which are completely separate and have leeway in the way they play out, including the possibility to lock off routes entirely when messing up specific opportunities. There's definitely more replay value here than most mystery games, which speaks highly to some degree, but replayable mystery is kind of an oxymoron. Regardless, even if the dialogue trees all run to the same answers, the ability to trick me into thinking the way I conduct myself is vital still speaks to how well put together so many of these levels are. The puzzles range from genuinely pretty clever to use key on ground next to door. Could have been thought out more in some spots, but it's really here nor there in the big picture. Stealth sections, desk minigames, if you can call them that, and the other bite-sized gameplay sections are usually fine, again, really only there to break up the gameplay, so some of these not really being much isn't even worth criticizing. Pace breaker that really jiggled my Jessies, though, was the document sorting. Enthralling, I know, but hear me out. There's a section where Howard steals a handful of random paperwork from a person of interest desk, and later sorts it out with Renee. The documents are all vaguely related, and it's up to the player to interpret what the story is altogether, with Renee keeping you tethered to the main plot while letting you suggest aliens are in Vancouver, and Baby Monkey doesn't really love Papa Monkey before drawing a collective conclusion on what these documents really are. It's no surprise there's a good deal of more personal conversations, usually between Howard and his partner Renee, who found him passed out drunk in the park in the first chapter, the way all good things come to start, at least from my experience. Some of these are fairly well done, probably not going to jerk any tears, but maybe you'll finally feel something again. A little too good at writing vaguely racist dialogue. I hope you guys are okay. Sometimes, however, these feel like Night in the Woods segments if they were written by Germ after the bank foreclosed on his trampoline, randomly talking about vague systematic issues while getting kind of metaphysical and never feeling anything outside the range of tired or nightmare. Renee is definitely the biggest contributor to this. Her unwavering morals and great posture contrast Howard's confused but ultimately kind nature really well, along with his Dota 2 posture.
Why are you sitting like you're playing Valorant? What is that?
But if Larry, the homeless guy, has more depth and history in the world than your deuteragonist, then you're definitely doing something wrong. Howard is also pretty open-ended. However, Howard does have some kind of development, albeit in a less traditional sense. While it can feel like half the cast just spontaneously sprang into existence 5 minutes before the game started, at least Howard can be shaped by the way the player projects themselves onto him. And honestly, this works great. Howard can range from a confused, lovable oaf with good compromise and an adept impromptu negotiator to a complete prick who's just good enough at what he does to make him indispensable to what Renee's working on. Alright, so the dialogue is flawed, but overall well done. The mechanics are fun and well thought out, and the level design and progression is genuinely great. So what's up with the I'm ripping my face off bit in the opening? The first 3 acts, about half the game, do a pretty good job building tension and getting close to some real payoff. The last 2 acts scrap all of it for a Wattpad fanfiction rewrite so detached from the source material that I genuinely forgot what game I was playing by the end of it. After Act 3, there will be one small puzzle, and apart from that, it's ceaseless dialogue, walls of text, and maybe gardening. In a cutscene. Okay, you ran out of gameplay ideas and just want to finish your story? Yeah, fine, alright, you can make that work. If you didn't completely fuck whatever amount of story you had in the first place. Been saving Clarissa for our spoilers section, so here's your warning. Clarissa is set up as genuinely a pretty strong villain, distant and untouchable, and a really evil motherfucker. Howard finds out she's been killing guests at her nightclub in order to sell their flesh to the Freemason neo-Nazi eugenicist 1%er apes that own Science City in exchange for control of the artifact. What is the artifact? I'd love to know. All we need to know for now is the only thing the game tells you directly. It rewrites your DNA. Or proteins. Or something. By the time enough of the pieces are put together that Howard and Renee know to gear up to Science City, Clarissa has them separated, and Howard ends up going alone. Blah blah science shit, there's a gun. Howard gets gooped by the artifact and has some stress dream hallucination of local parades, and boom, Lovecraftian monster appendage rips its way out of Howard's back, pierces its way through one of our closest buddies, and kills our greatest hero.
Anatoly.
It's a shocking end to the third act. A sudden end to a very likable side character. This comes out of nowhere. You know what else comes out of nowhere? Botany. We're picking plants now. The story comes to a grinding halt after the parade sequence, when Howard's old roommate, Larry, the homeless guy from Act 1, finds us and drags us all the way back to his camp. It's a scenic change of pace and a chance for you to catch your breath for the first 5 minutes. But after picking plants, helping in the garden, learning about this dude's library, hearing this girl talk about chronic fatigue, hearing this kid just be a bigot, hearing everyone complain how this kid is just kind of a bigot, and hanging out with this Giza, you come to see how Tales Noir's sense of direction couldn't get you from Seattle to Vancouver without landing you in the Atlantic Ocean. The artifact, now a giant pulsating tumor, starts speaking to Howard now too. I've seen a couple of people call this body horror, and yeah, I think it would be pretty fucked up if a giant lump on my back spoke to me like a high schooler that just read the Metamorphosis for the first time, and blowing my brains out wasn't an immediate option. The artifact somehow backward engineers what parts made the dialogue mechanics work and turn it into dragging, boring paragraphs stapled to your forehead you'll end up skipping through to no repercussions. Even despite the flawed dialogue, earlier acts would occasionally hit you with something that gave your brain something to chew on. For example, Ginger and Harold are 2 elderly folks that are easy to miss, both being on opposite ends of the plaza. Ginger is a cynical loner who's found solace being on her own in her old age, while Harold is looking for his late wife's wedding ring, scared he's going to forget her without it. Nothing crazy, but a good contrast that makes the player ponder both individuals' lives for a second. You can even play Cupid a little and tell them each other's tragic tales, setting them up together. It's small, but ultimately it does a good job giving the player a small bit of freedom and gives the world a bit of identity in a way that the player has a direct impact on. How's about we throw in a long, winding dialogue on a black screen where you're given a pop quiz on this exact scenario? Throwing you an eloquent bowl of word soup, you'll throw whatever answer ends the dialogue tree the fastest. Like you're talking to a coworker as you're halfway out the door. This is nearly every conversation with the artifact. These sections make earlier personal conversations between Renee and Howard look like Shane Carruth movies. Anyway, Larry disappears to do crack. He's abruptly written out here completely. Rest in peace, our last somewhat likable reoccurring character. Anyway, I'm gonna get you. They get Howard, the bad guys. They put you in a box. This rabbit doesn't fucking matter. Seriously, if you thought I was loquacious, wait till you meet this bitch. The artifact starts to really scramble Howard's brain, pretty much taking over his mind and body altogether. You do that one puzzle, stuffing a wet napkin into a vent so fucking good that it just short-circuits Belle's brain, causing her to stand in a corner while you just waltz your blistering, tumor-riddled ass out of the building, right past whatever security and police would be. Oh yeah, this is in Vancouver. Never mind, yeah, Howard looks pretty standard issue here. And boom, epilogue. Sorry if this is a little jarring, but this is the exact pace we hit this point. The game still has a couple of points it wants to make. I hope your expectations dip low enough to stop caring about these characters by now, because this conclusion wraps it up about as well as a bar burrito employee. I will not fucking let that go. In our final confrontation, Clarissa decides it's time to pull the rug, and our one-woman culinary Birkin Hare reveals she's done it all in good faith. I don't know where misogyny lands on the apes' list of crimes, especially considering it's maybe been lightly hinted at a single time, but Clarissa is stuck on it here. Based on what little lore they're given, I wouldn't put sexism past them, but there's a couple of offenses in here that would land them in the Nuremberg trials. I don't think eating poor people is a very gendered issue. Tangents aside, Clarissa has been playing politics this whole time in order to send people over the Vancouver Wall, and now she wants to pull down the whole thing. The wasteland beyond can supposedly support life. She claims to know this because she's been there herself, and she sent the girls Howard's been searching for the entire second act over the wall in order to start new lives, free of the city's shackles. Now, you may be skeptical at first. The woman who was responsible for the suffering of everyone we've been investigating this far, who has been drugging and killing people in cold blood in exchange for money and power, the one who broke into your house, assaulted you, threatened to kill your mother for shits and giggles, tells you the missing girls under her care are fine. Trust me, they're over behind this wall. Come look. Yeah, no, perfectly reasonable. We only see the wasteland beyond the wall once, right at the end of the game. And we see that there's nothing. A giant rundown city, yeah, but that doesn't tell us anything we don't already know. There's human skulls in the lab at the end of Act 3 Eddie confirms are a species that went extinct some time ago. So obviously there'll be ruins outside of the Vancouver walls. There's no evidence pointing towards the girls being dead, but there isn't really anything saying that they're alive either. Our only pro-wastelanders are Clarissa, who is Clarissa, and Dio, the wall smuggler who refuses to even speak about his smuggling efforts once we meet him. Why not have the final sequence of Howard succumbing to the artifact out in the middle of nowhere happen at the edge of the missing girls' camp or something? Even the artifact itself is a loose end. It can rewrite genetics, so Clarissa is trying to use it to prove the monkey's eugenics practices are a bad idea. I'm not sure if she has the ability to put this together, but there are a lot of arguments against the ape's breed of bigotry that don't involve creating Daryl V. Why is it so important the monkeys don't have it? So they don't use it to create horrible abominations against nature? Like Daryl V? How did the apes even become the elite? Does Howard die at the end? The title of Act 4 implies he's undergoing some sort of change. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, let's fucking go. Please consult sucking on my lower Venn diagram sphere. By the time it's over, the story's plot threads are left about as loose as the lips on your mother's poontang. And instead of tying any of these up, it all comes to a sudden and complete stop. Leaving clues to interpretation is one thing, but everything is so clearly close to completion, yet completely unresolved. The story is obviously full of holes, but there's genuinely no room for a sequel either. It's tragic considering the abundance of talent and ambition that are clearly on display here, and a solid story that's buried beneath poor direction and bad writing decision after bad writing decision. Like not enough Larry, or getting rid of Larry. Maybe the preludes are a little bit better.
I will If only I